everyone. It's Manessa, and I am back here for my last episode of Stop Shitting All Over Yourself. And it was one that I had intended to be the capstone of my interviews. I may have one or two more, but this particular conversation really encompasses so much of what I was trying to do when I started this podcast that it seemed like a very fitting capstone for the podcast. You know how when you're having a conversation with someone that gives you chills, like when you're actually having it, like your whole body feels that this conversation is something that is special. And that was this conversation that I had with Dr. Melissa Bird. Now, she and I had met like once before, and we had mutual friends who had connected us. But once we started talking, we knew immediately that we had a kinship. And from the moment we hit record on this podcast, from honestly, even before that, we knew that something magical was happening. It was deep, it was electric, it was spiritually grounded, it was politically urgent, the whole nine. It was so passionate. And we were both vibrating. You'll be able to see it during the conversation from how aligned and alive it felt. And even now, since we recorded it, we've talked since then. And when we talk about it, we both remember how we felt and how we still feel when we engage together in community. And so I'm really excited to be able to share this experience I had with her with you. After I recorded this video with Dr. Bird, one thing after another in my personal life and my professional life started happening. I was emotionally exhausted. I was dealing with changing of jobs. I was traumatized, and I just didn't have the stamina to get on a computer and edit. And so I had this beautiful conversation that I believe to be world changing for a person in the right place at the right time in their life to hear this message, just waiting to be shared, sitting there. And as much as I was constantly thinking about it, I also deeply believe that things happen when they're supposed to. And that's something that Melissa and I have in common. So instead of giving myself shit about all the time that passed, I trusted that when the moment was right, I would know, and I'd be ready to edit and share it with the world. And I did know. I finally had the emotional capacity and the spiritual clarity to be able to come back to this conversation. And wow, it turns out I'm the one that needed to hear it. I am the person in the right place at the right time who needs to hear this message again to myself. I found that as I listened to us talk, that every single thing that we talked about a year ago is even more relevant now. The world has gotten scarier for people of a variety of different communities. If you were already marginalized, it is just hitting home even worse now. It is getting harder for us. And more than just that, as if that isn't enough, but more than just that, anyone, even people who are not historically in marginalized communities, who are now trying to hold on to their humanity in systems that are built to erase it, are struggling at this time. We're in a space where specifically research funding, so in my particular world, research funding is shifting in terrifying ways, leaving investigators, administrators, and scholars to figure out how we need to move forward inside structures that are now being redesigned to be not meant for us, not meant for research, not meant for growth, not meant for diversity, not meant for anything other than whatever the current agenda happens to be, at the top. And then capitalism, it just keeps grinding on. Even though we collectively realize that it is destroying us, it just keeps grinding as it has its death throes. And for many of us, and this is a conversation I'm having with people across the world, in a variety of industries, a variety of spaces, a variety of living situations and frameworks. So this is a universal challenge that we're all facing right now, is how do we live in this space? And as I re-listened to this conversation, so I myself have been struggling with this, right? And as I listened to this conversation again, I saw that this conversation with Melissa was a map. She talks about what it means to reclaim identity in a world that is obsessed with categorizing and erasing us. She talked about ancestral wisdom and spiritual resistance and how grief can be the portal to growth, which I think is so important for so many of us are not taught how to grieve in a healthy way. We're just supposed to push it down and move on and suck it up and, just keep moving, right? But we, in this conversation, Dr. Bird really talks about how you have to go through the grief to be able to grow and get somewhere. And right now we are all grieving so many things. We're grieving on a personal level. We're grieving on a community level. We're grieving nationally. We're grieving globally. Our very humanity is grieving at the state of the world. And during our conversation, we talk about colonization, funding, the performativity of institutional change, and how do we actually build something new? Because that's really the key, right? Like, we all know what we're going through, but the real question that we all have is how do we build something new and move on into a healthier, happier space? And this conversation was a beautiful, beautiful roadmap to that. And so while I was re listening to it and editing it, I signed up for her Rebel School, which she runs a few times a year, because I could tell that I needed that bridge from watching the world burn and wondering, how do I live in this to actually sort of believing that it's possible to live with joy on purpose and in alignment with yourself, which I do believe it is, but sometimes, like, healing and doing the work, as all of us know, doesn't necessarily mean that these feelings go away. It just means that you learn what your tools are when you find yourself in those spaces. Like, I know it's possible to do this. I've done this before, but sometimes I forget, and I need my community and people like Melissa to help guide me to find my way again. And that's what Rebel School does, which is why I signed up for it. So now, if you're not able to join Rebel School, because when you listen to this, it's not active right now, she runs it a few times. But if you happen to be listening to this and being like, oh my God, I'm totally ready to join, I'm ready for this change, I'm ready to live with intention, stop spinning, and feel like there is a possibility for joy and happiness, she has a lot of different ways that you can work with her to gently guide you through finding peace. So it doesn't have to be Rebel School, though that's a wonderful opportunity. If it happens to be open while you're listening to this, go sign up. If not, know that she offers one-on-one coaching. She speaks all over the country. She teaches a doll making class, which is, like, I'm not doing it justice by calling it a doll making class. You actually have to go and read about it, which the link is in the show notes. It is way, way, way more than simply a doll making class. So please do take a look at that. And she shares regular love notes and spiritual guidance on her Substack. She is one of the wisest, most grounded, most human people I've ever talked to. And we try to make time to connect regularly because we really like the way our energetic exchange feels. I personally love it. I love the things we talk about. I love the things we laugh about. I love the things we cry about. We always cry, laugh, and have a moment where we're like, holy shit, we just like downloaded something and wow. So we always have that kind of thing. So you're going to get that in this podcast. Because the truth is there is something healing in community. And we've become really isolated in this world. And I bring this up specifically because if you know me, I'm always talking about how much I dig being alone. I love being in my solitude. I love my fortress. I'm hidden away. I'm alone and loving it. But even with that perspective, right? The perspective of I prefer solitude in the company of my wife. When I say I'm alone, I mean my wife's here. My wife doesn't count. My wife and I are alone together. But even with all of that taken into consideration, I need my people. I need my community. I need my cousins, as we all do, right? We all need that. And I would love for you to follow her, work with her, and pay her if her work resonates with you, because this work, the deep, embodied, heartfelt work that we do together, is how we get free. So without further ado, let us get into it and listen in.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Melissa Bird, and I'm so excited. I am a descendant of the Shivwits band of Paiutes, and I live in Corvallis, Oregon, currently. I'm a healer and a preacher and a Christian witch, and I write books and write on Substack, and I do tarot readings. I just finished doing a tarot reading earlier.
For
And
the Passionistas?
For the Passionistas,
Nice,
yeah,
nice.
super, super awesome. And I'm a business owner and
Like, I love it. I love it. And
activist.
so what's funny is, I just want to touch base on Corvallis, Oregon. So when I looked at your bio, like, of all the places for, because Corvallis is a small, for anybody that doesn't know, it's in Oregon. It's a smaller town, and it's near an even smaller town called Monmouth, Oregon, the smallest town ever did exist, where I went to college for a grand total of 3 months. And then went back to Pakistan because America was so scary. I was like, I'd rather go back to Pakistan because America is just too scary.
I cannot believe you were in Monmouth. Like, my daughter went to school there for a year and was like, Mom, I can't do this anymore. And I was like, I don't blame you. Go to Portland, like, whatever. But of all the places in all the world, for you, of all the people, to end up in Monmouth, Oregon. What people don't know is that Oregon is actually a deeply racist state. And so you ending up in small town Oregon is really bananas.
Well, it explains, because like when I was that young, right, and so naive, I thought we were living in a post-racial society. I, I know I'm like, whoa, it's amazing you can get indoctrinated anywhere, and so I was really surprised. And then now when I look back, I probably shouldn't have been, right? Obviously, there's nothing to be surprised about. This is how it would end up. But I think that was like I'd always experienced racism on the other side, but now I experience racism on this side, and it created a really, you know, being mixed is hard.
Oh, friend,
Throwing that out there.
say it.
Let's
Say
talk.
it. Let's talk about what it's like to be mixed race for a hot minute, shall we?
Oh my God, it's so hard. Tell me, like, I mean, do you not find like
Well,
sometimes you're like, do I belong here? Do I belong here? I'm not this enough. I'm not that enough.
oh hell yeah! Like, well, so I grew up in Utah, but I'm okay. No, I'm just kidding. Um,
Not okay? Are you not okay?
no, I'm okay. It's my joke about Utah.
No, I
Right?
know. I was...
Utah has so many stigmas because of the LDS Church, right? The Mormon Church. So I grew up so I'm part Native American and a white girl, and I grew up. So it's actually tied to some crap too. So my dad is Native, and he committed suicide when I was 6, and my mom, because of her deep anguish and her grief, like I can see it now because I'm almost 50, so now I understand it. But when I was little, I wasn't allowed to talk about my dad. So because of her just anguish and grief and trauma around his death. And my mother, actually, it took her all the way until 2 years ago for my mom to apologize to me and say, I'm really sorry I didn't allow you and your sister to talk about your dad, because what I'm realizing is it kept you away from your identity. And there's a lot of stuff with my paternal side of the family that I don't really want to get into. In many ways, I'm actually grateful she kept us away from them. Mm-hmm. Well, we had to see them for a while, and then all of a sudden we were not seeing them anymore for a lot of really awful reasons. But what it meant for me growing up is that I had no identity. And in the summer, I get really dark. And it was much more prevalent when I was a little kid, because we didn't use sunscreen in the 80s. Mm-hmm. Like, who the hell is using sunscreen, right? So I'm this towhead, really dark-skinned little girl. And my friends all assumed I was Navajo. Because they just didn't, we just were, and I'm living under the church, right, which is very racist. The LDS Church didn't even allow black people into the priesthood until the 70s. Mm-hmm. And so my dad never talked about being Native to my mom, ever. How could he? Like, how could he talk about that when he is holding the priesthood in a church that hates him as a human? But where it gets really complicated in my adulthood is it really wasn't until I was actually Googling my dad's obituary, and I found my uncle. And then I found my cousins online. And I hadn't talked to them since I was 12. I think I was 11 or 12. And I found all these people and connected with all these people. And all of these people are living, like one of my cousins lives on the Navajo Nation. One of my cousins used to work for the Paiute tribe. Like, all of my relatives are living in this way, and I have zero connection to it at all. Mm-hmm. And so then I had to start building that part, allowing myself to acknowledge that a lot of the things that I understand spiritually and intuitively are from that ancestry that I have never been allowed to connect to until I reconnected with my family. And so it's very complicated. And I think this is complicated by the colonizer mentality here in the United States, that Native people look a certain way. Like, we're all super dark skinned with super black hair. And so for me, like, I actually have had people say to me, well, you are part of the Native community. And I'm all, don't I have to pass some sort of litmus test for that? Like, because of the way we've structured the system in the United States in order to colonize and commit acts of genocide against my people. And it was all complicated by the Mormon Church, because what I didn't realize literally until my adulthood was that the largest massacre that was enacted by the Mormon Church, they actually used, in particular, the Shivwits band of Paiutes they dressed up like them and pretended to be them to slaughter another band of pioneers and blamed us, my ancestors. And so I didn't even realize that until my adulthood. And so there's all this stuff that I think we don't realize when it comes to being mixed race, that is also just totally tightly woven into white supremacy and genocide, that we just really have a hard time talking about because of the way we have set the United States up in this identity politics, Puritan sort of culture about identity and how we identify. And race is a total construct. It's not even real.
Right.
And yet we are like totally living under these structures that force us into trying to think about who we are. And this is why I love my spiritual practice so much, because I pull upon my ancestry. And my ancestry comes from Celtic roots and Native roots. And so that's why I love my spiritual practice so much, because I can pull on those things and weave those things together. And to me, it feels like a little act of rebellion.
I was going to say, like, it's resistance.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Oh my God. You mentioned earlier about how don't I have to pass some sort of litmus test, and one of the things that, that like, I think is part of the infrastructure that is imposed upon us is that to keep people separated, there's the one drop, right? Like,
One drop rule.
Yeah, and that's where and so it keeps us separated so that we can't find community, right? Because it's so, going back to America, so individualized.
Yeah, and I think the thing that people don't understand about the one drop rule is that it was not a construct created by Native communities. That is not a construct created by Native governments. It's a construct created by the federal government to identify who is a Native person in order to kill them. Yeah. And so the one drop rule for Black people was to create a slave race, right? A race of humans that could be used as slaves. At the same exact time, they created the one drop rule for Natives to literally eliminate us from the planet.
Right.
And so the motivations are also very different, which creates the lack of knowledge about why blood quantum is so racist and genocidal and dangerous, even within Native communities, is complicated because it's all tied to enrollment numbers. And the rules are all made by all the different governments. All those sovereign nations make different rules.
And the rules are being made in response to the overarching, because like ultimately, and I find that really interesting, is where you create an infrastructure and say you have to work within this infrastructure.
Yep.
And then it forces people then to, contort themselves and to be able to fit into it. Because ultimately, and I think going back to what you were saying is being mixed is difficult because I think something you said about like, the spiritual practice, right? So for me, that's where I started to, because so for the longest time, I don't really identify with being Pakistani per se. Like I was raised in Pakistan. I grew up there, but like that never really felt something within me. And I was like, I didn't understand. And then eventually I started to realize that was a that's a nation that was imposed upon. And when I think about it, my connection is to my desiness, right? Which is being Southeast Asian, and in the summers I used to look very different. So my skin used to be, when I was living in Pakistan, my skin was so much darker. Sometimes when I look in the mirror, I freak myself out because I don't remember. I'll be like having a dream and I'll be a kid and I'll be so much, and I'll look at my, oh my God, what happened?
Isn't it crazy?
It's so
anyway,
crazy.
Go on.
Well, what's good, you actually said something about that is like, also is you get a lot of, but you don't look, but you don't sound, but you don't, and then there's a lot of like, I think there's also like a, something, I wanted to touch base on with you, because we talked about this in our earlier conversation, is you have a PhD. What's your PhD in? I want everybody to hear, because it's amazing.
My PhD is in social work. Yeah.
And you said you did some specialization in gender studies?
I do have a gender studies gift certificate. I have a gender studies gift certificate. It was a gift that I earned. I earned by going through the blood, sweat, and tears of writing a dissertation. My research is all on reproductive health in reproductive justice in rural communities. So so I used to be the lobbyist for Planned Parenthood of Utah. And in my activism work, I realized how important it is to tell the real stories of people's lives, right? Like the stories of what happens. And I particularly was interested in how people navigate religious stigma to get contraception.
Mm-hmm.
And then abortion conversations just stemmed from those conversations. But I actually got a lot of pushback from me getting because there was all this pushback about me doing a qualitative dissertation to tell these women's stories about their experiences living in rural places trying to get contraception. And now I kind of laugh because I'm like, this research has never been more relevant ever.
Mm-hmm.
Like in
Absolutely.
the time that we're living in right now, like with everything that's happening in the United States, like it's never been more relevant.
And so going back, talking about research, so a lot of my audience is research administrators. So, and so I'm all about the research. And we talked last time about a little bit about the challenges that exist within academia. And, like there are ideas that are important. And like you mentioned and you got a lot of pushback for it. And going back to sort of like talking about colonial infrastructures being imposed upon us, what I wanted to sort of get an idea, talk about is, how do you feel like, when you think about it, how do you think these already oppressive infrastructures are influencing and like manifesting in academia for the research that you're doing and for and creating a more difficult environment? Like, how do you think that that's coming together? Tell me about this.
Literally my first week of my PhD program. So I started 2013, 2014, something like. I graduated in 2017, so I can't, it's 2013 or something. I finished in 4 years, so that's
amazing.
Yeah, I did. Fully qualitative.
It's like you went fast. You were like, I am getting the.
I was like, I am out of here. I am not. No, I'm not playing that 7-year game here, people. Literally was told by a very important administrator that reproductive health had nothing to do with social work, and that she did not want to see my no wire hangers protest signs anywhere near her school.
Wow.
And social work, we're talking about the ability to decide when and how you have children.
But that has nothing to do with reproductive rights.
That has nothing to do with social work, right? Like, reproductive justice has nothing to do with social work. And I was like, well, this is going to be interesting. I almost didn't get in. Oh my God,
you're running this department?
I almost didn't get into my program because there was so much pushback, because I don't come with money. Reproductive justice doesn't come with money. And it's an R1 institution, Research 1 institution, that insists that its students and the capacity to bring in more and more and more and more NIH dollars, that's their bread and butter. And I don't come with money. Like, they wouldn't even pay. They were paying all my colleagues to do their dissertations. Like, they were finding them grant funding. They were finding them all this money. I had to crowdfund. I crowdfunded to pay for my dissertation.
That was amazing that you were able to do that, but terrible that they even did that. And not surprising though, because I see it.
Not surprising at all. And so it's this structure of, PhD students have to come with money. And then the expectation is that we will continue on to go to an R1 institution and make that other institution more money.
Yeah.
Right? And it's all about money. And one of the reasons I actually quit teaching and I got out of academia completely is because I started to realize that the questions we ask in social work in particular, it's so driven by grants that are created, like the grants that fund nonprofit organizations are the funders that fund, like the foundations are all white people foundations, right? And their assumptions are that the people that we work with in social work, their needs are the same as the funders, right?
Yeah.
So the assumption is you need all of these things: wealth, you need abundance, you need a home, you need a car, you need it's all this capitalistic shit that creates a family. And I used to teach my students to ask their clients what they need, and then go to the administrators and tell them to write a grant for what their clients actually need. Yeah. And my students were getting in trouble.
Right.
Because they were asking the question, what do you need, of their clients? And their clients were like, my favorite example of this is this guy, this homeless guy, Ray, who used to sit outside the post office, and he and I would sit and shoot the shit, and we talk to each other, and I'd be like, Ray, what do you need? And he had cancer, and he had cancer on the top of his head, and you could see it. Like, he was sick. And I said to him one day, I was like, Ray, what do you need? And I thought he was going to say, like, a ride to the hospital, or, it'd be nice if I could find some housing so I can, like, deal with this cancer problem. And he's like, I just need some hot lasagna. I was like, okay, buddy, that's all you need? Like, if you could have anything in the world right now, that's what you want? He's like, yeah. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go get you some hot lasagna, and I'll be back in a minute.
Oh, my God.
So I went to get him, I went to Spaghetti Factory and got him the bread and the salad and the hot lasagna and, the ice cream.
Oh, my God, he must have loved that. Oh, my God, yeah. Delicious.
And I told Ray to stay there, right? I was like, bro, don't move. And of course he moves, right? Like, he starts wandering. I'm like, God damn it. So I'm driving in like a bullseye circumference around Corvallis, which, by the way, is not that big, right? You already mentioned. So finally I see Ray, and I'm like, Ray! And he's like, Missy! And I was like, here's your hot lasagna. And he starts crying. And he's like, Missy, nobody ever follows through with bringing me what I asked for. And I was like, yes. The problem with the entire structure of social services in the United States of America is, number one, it's totally puritanical and racist. Like, it is so, the expectation is that churches and nonprofits will take care of our people, and nobody else has to deal with that. We're just going to move them to the side, move them to the side, move them to the side. And we're also asking the wrong questions. The question is, what do you need? And then the follow through is what's most important, because Ray's in tears. I'm in tears. I get out of my car, I give him a big huge hug, and I'm like, dude, you can always ask me for what you need.
The follow through, I think that, that's really, I think that there's two things. One is you're, asking what they need. And what's really interesting about this is that, there have been a lot of announcements of late, because I work with a lot of community-based organizations who don't typically have research administrators, and so it's how can we get a grant, and how do you submit a grant, because the NIH has been, and ARPA have been making announcements trying to get grants down to the ground, right, like where the people actually are, but there is no infrastructure set up. Like, so somebody is submitting a grant, so okay, it's $1 million, great, they're very excited about the $1 million, but if you haven't provided people with the support that's necessary for them to be able to now do what you're saying, then essentially it's going back to what you were saying earlier, where you've set up the system for somebody to fail and said, here, I've given you the opportunity, now figure out how to do it within, and it's like, so it's sort of like performative. The word I'm looking for is performative.
And the thing about it is the NIH isn't interested in what people actually need. That's not what their research is based on. It's based on the assumption of what science needs to tell other people what they need. And that's just, it's bullshit. The whole thing is just a hot mess of chaotic bullshit. And in the meantime, people don't have homes. Like, the United Nations Bill of Human Rights that was drafted by one of my heroes, Eleanor Roosevelt, whose name is tattooed on my arm. Like, Eleanor Roosevelt, in the, post-World War II, we've got to create a United Nations Bill of Human Rights. And in that right is the right to housing.
Yeah.
We are literally violating the UN Constitution in this country every day, because we cannot figure out how to house our people.
I think one of the bigger, and going back to what you're saying, is that I think that's where community comes in, because we were talking about how we keep people separated, right?
Yep.
And so I was reading, I just want to throw this out there because I've just been thinking about this a lot lately, is the other day, literally 3 days ago, I was, and so I'm going to actually type it out, because I want to make sure that I have the right information. So I was reading about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Because I've used it for years and years and years, right?
Yeah.
And then I saw something about the Blackfoot too. And so for everybody who doesn't know, Maslow he's trying to figure out, the Blackfoot have so many people who are happy and healthy, and they live this great life, and they're so fulfilled, and it's amazing. We must go find out what these people are doing to be all this, right? So he goes and he sits with them for however long he sits with them, and what he comes out with is bullshit. He creates his own story of what it is that happens under the capitalist framework, and one of the things that I think was so critical is that it was about community and
Yep.
taking care of each other, and
Yep.
and the base of the pyramid is that community. It's not you have community somewhere later on after you figured out your own shit.
No.
It's the community, right? And when you talk about all of these issues that we're having, it's because I think we start from this space of, and he had no other, he was going to go in that direction no matter what, because when you have the framework of individualized, right?
Yeah.
That's, and so,
Self-actualization.
yeah, so when you're like, this is the way we're going to go. I also found it fascinating. So this is really interesting to me, is that I've often, so the kids that I'm seeing being raised today, right, are like the ones I'm like, wow, this kid's amazing, are being raised by people who treat their children like they're actualized from birth,
Yep.
which is exactly, so for anybody who has not read this, the link will be in the show notes. It will blow your mind.
Here's the thing. Food, clothing, and shelter is created communally.
Mm-hmm.
That food, clothing, and shelter is a communal experience in the Blackfoot way, right? Like, and the way you perpetuate the structure of white supremacy is you don't allow people to be communal and connected.
Mm-hmm.
You look at that as a tertiary thing that is not connected to the wellness of people, right? And so I think what's really important for us to think about is, and this is something that I've really been giving this oodles of thought lately, is that it's okay for this democracy to be going through a crumbling. Mm-hmm. Because this democracy is built on white supremacy and genocide. Mm-hmm. I have a t-shirt that says Merciless Indian Savages and then Declaration of Independence underneath it. And I wear it a lot. And it makes me very uncomfortable.
You know what? People are uncomfortable.
They don't know that's written into the Declaration of Independence, right? And like we have to understand that I would like a democracy to continue, and also I think that we have a lot of things that it's okay. It's okay for this to be falling apart because it's a nice experiment that isn't working, and it's an experiment built on the death of our people. It's not like the Native American reservation system that was created by the federal government. Mm-hmm. Was a model for the Holocaust. It was an inspiring model. Hitler writes about it. It inspired Hitler.
Well, that's something you want to put on your wall.
We have a problem.
We have a lot of
a problem, okay? So as people like as we're thinking about all of these ideas and all of these conversations, and I love what you said about people raising their kids to be actualized. Do you know how much trouble that causes my children? It's so hard for them to connect with other young people their age because other young people their age are not actualized. I literally just found out from my 14-year-old and my 16-year-old that their friends don't know how to order boba tea by themselves.
What are they going to do when they get out into the world?
Well, I don't know that they're going to get out into the world.
That's another good point.
I have a lot of thoughts about parenting right now.
Oh, God. I don't have
because I'm raising these people to be adults, and they're gonna go do something, and I'm not gonna be there to order boba tea for them, right?
You have to be able to teach them to fly.
That's yes, and teach them to remember that we are part of a collective.
Yeah,
and that in that flying, wherever they land, that home is also part of their collective. Mm-hmm. And we COVID did not help this, but we live in a very insular, we live in places where we don't talk to our neighbors, where we live in these cutout houses or apartment buildings or massive buildings that we are separated from each other.
And I call us pod people. We live in pods and we're pod people.
Yeah. And we just forget that there's there's a whole world out there of humanity that we are meant to be connected with. And I think we forget that is what brings us joy and happiness is the collective. And not the social media collective. Not that I'm not grateful for that bringing me connected to other people. But what I'm really starting to realize, the more AI really infiltrates the social media space,
Mm-hmm.
is we're actually not talking to humans. We're talking to
Oh,
machines.
I saw something the other day that said I can't be bothered to read something if you can't be bothered to write it, and I was like, and absolutely, absolutely,
We're
like,
talking
and
to machines, and we're not connecting in this. We are meant to connect in this collective tissue, and we're meant to learn. We're meant to
mm-hmm.
learn from the mistakes of our past so that we don't repeat them in the future. We're meant to be present, like present to this exact moment. And it's so hard for us to figure out how to put aside the phone for even 10 minutes to go. I mean, like, my friend the other day sent me a TikTok and I said, I can't look at that because I deactivated my TikTok account. And my friend was like, what do you mean? And I was like, I told you I was getting off social media. And my friend was like, but you, of all the people in the land, you do, like, you eat, live, and breathe social media. And I said, not anymore, because it's not the same.
I did. I cut my. I almost. I'm off. I used to be on it all the freaking time.
Yeah, the
Not at
social
all.
media from even 2 years ago is not the same because the AI has infiltrated social media and we're not talking to each other anymore. We're talking to robots.
You said something. Oh my god. And I was like, shit. I want to come back to this. Fuck. Hold on. You're talking about AI, social media. Right before that, what was the community?
About our neighborhoods and living,
Our
like, we're
neighborhoods and
the collective tissue of our communities. Like,
you know what? You said something and I was like, oh my God, it lit a fire within me. And oh yes, I know. Okay. So here's actually what I wanted to ask. Like, so you said something, right? About, what I thought of as we were talking about, you said it's okay for the democracy to fund, as we started to talk about those things. That's it. And the thread came in because then it was talking about the children who can't order boba tea by themselves, right? So putting those things together, I thought about how parents very overprotect their children because they're terrified that something, like they want to make sure that they're, and so they don't let them go out and learn how to buy boba tea or take care of themselves. I feel like we as a this is part of the what I call the four horsemen. It's the patriarchy, colonialism, capitalism, and racism. Putting them together, our conditioning. We're terrified. We're like terrified of discomfort.
yeah,
Like we're not allowed to be uncomfortable.
yep.
And what I'm finding is that whenever there is a moment where there's a rub of like, I am being faced with this idea that is making me incredibly uncomfortable and now I'm going to have to change, because we're not allowed to, like, don't talk to people about your problems, like keep it in, sort it out, talk about it in therapy, work it out. We don't get to take advantage of that community. So as a result, the change doesn't happen because we just avoid the discomfort, right? Like I know I did that for many, many years.
I think this is very much an artifact of World War II. So I have, when the whole "Hey Boomer" thing came out, I was so upset.
Yeah.
First of all, I was really upset about that because I come from a mindset and a culture that is all about honoring the elder, right? Like, I was
Yeah.
raised that you honor your elders because your elders carry wisdom and you honor them. Even if you don't have to agree with your elders, but you honor your elders and you honor your parents because they carry the wisdom of their lifetimes and they carry the wisdom of the generations before them, right? That's what elders do. And, I thought I had this like super amazing download where I was thinking about my mom. My mom's 75 this year. And I was thinking about how she was raised. And I was thinking about this in the context of, we talk so much about generational trauma, right? And I was thinking about what happened when World War II ended globally. And I was also thinking about it in the context of the last time we experienced a global grief process was World War II. So we had COVID, which created this huge uprising of global grief. We were all, like, the earth was grieving, we were grieving, the whole fucking planet was in grief. And I was thinking real deeply about how the last time that happened, it was World War II. And what happened here in America, but I think also around the world, was soldiers came back from fighting in World War II, and immediately the lid was put on their experience because we didn't want to talk about how close we came to global annihilation, right? Mm-hmm. So we put the lid on it, and we expected, here in this country in particular, women, take care of your men, be home, create a safe and stable home. Here, we're going to give you this cookie cutter house, right? In these cookie cutter neighborhoods. You have dinner on the table at 6, kids in bed by 8, highball in the hand when he gets home. But we're not going to talk
wasn't there.
about, yeah, we're not going to talk about those war experiences at all. We're not going to talk about what happened in the trenches. We're not going to talk about how many people died. We're not going to talk about any of that.
Right.
We're going to ignore the fact that you're screaming in the middle of the night, that you're falling out of bed because you think you're being attacked, that every time fireworks goes off for the 4th of July, which you're an army man, you should be a patriot. You hate the fireworks because they totally freak you out and you don't know where they're coming from. We're not going to talk about any of that. We're going to create the perfect home. And we're never going to talk about the war unless we're talking about it from the space of heroism and defeating the communists. Mm-hmm. So my mom, our moms and dads were born into that energy.
Yep.
The energy of silence.
Yep.
The energy of never addressing what we're hearing behind the closed door.
And that's
how they raised us. In addition, they also raised us to be totally invisible, seen and not heard. Mm-hmm. Go away. I have no need for you. When the lights turn on, come home for dinner, right? So we are now dismantling and disrupting the shoulding, this bullshit narrative that we should be behaving in a certain way.
Yep.
Totally comes from 1949 and the end of the war and us not being allowed to talk about it. And that is what we are starting to disrupt. Like all of a sudden, all of us are like, wait a minute. I think there's more to this conversation that can be had, and it's going to make us all really, really uncomfortable to have it.
Yeah.
But we haven't been having that conversation probably ever, but really for sure since the World War II ended. And that's why people are so uncomfortable, is because we are bringing up not just racism, sexism, colonialism, all that shit, but we're bringing up grief. And we're bringing up literally at least 2, if not 3 generations of grief. And people hate grief. It's the discomfort of the feelings that people don't like. And that's why I think people are so uncomfortable when they get confronted. And I think we've got to have grace. This is why I talk about the graceful revolution and all of the work that I do, because we have got to have grace for each other. We can't just be pissed off at each other all the time. That's not going to help us change. Right. It's not going to help us evolve. And it's sure as shit not going to create community. What we really have to do, Melissa, is we have to think about, if we're going to stop shooting all over ourselves and we're going to really move into the space of discomfort so we can grow and heal, then we have to start thinking about giving each other grace, because we're going to fuck this up, because we have been ignoring all of these things for years and years and years. And my hope is that this democracy turns into a democracy that actually acknowledges and embraces what it has done to people over time, so that we can build a democracy that is built on that grace for everybody, even when we don't agree with them.
I think also, like, I love everything that you just said. Like, as I heard you talk, I was like, you know what, this explains. First of all, thanks for the great clip. I'm going to use it a lot. So thank you on that one, because it articulates sort of how we got here. Because, like, I think for many of us, we find ourselves in this position, and it's like, we kind of have a feeling inside. It's like, okay, I know that my parents are away because their parents were away, and like, and so on and so forth. But like, how did it get built? And it's almost like it's not like my fault that it happened, but like, you know, I have a decolonization coach. His name is AJ Singh, and he's amazing. And one of the things that we've been talking a lot about is how to take accountability and then have compassion for yourself. And then, like, as you were saying, grace, so that we can have the conversations of healing and then moving to that next space. Because you're really like, it's almost like, if you think about it, if I'm holding in all of my pain and you're holding in all of your pain, and now you and I are talking to each other, we're almost only just surface level talking, right? But like, we open up and talk about, you know, taking accountability and the struggles and the challenges and so on, our connection is like, it's deeper and it's more intimate, and it's more now like there's an energy exchange that happens that can't happen if you're not willing to be vulnerable. But there's a fear of vulnerability. I'm curious. Where do you feel like rejection plays into that? Because let's say I'm willing to be vulnerable, but I'm afraid that like if I try I'm going to use pronouns as an example because this is great, right? So someone says I'm going to try to do the pronouns, I'm going to try to do the they them things, to be great, I'm going to do it, right? And so they're talking to someone and they accidentally say she instead of they, and then
Then they crumble.
they crumble because they feel rejected. Because I was like, then I'm like, no, wait, I use they them, and then they crumble because there is a feeling of rejection. So I'm curious to know, like, where do you think rejection fits into all of this?
Well, I think that I want to talk about vulnerability first, because vulnerability is not an action that leads to pain. It's an action that leads to love. Being vulnerable doesn't mean we're opening ourselves up to pain and rejection. It actually means we're opening ourselves up to understanding and love. It is only these capitalistic white supremacist structures that teach us that vulnerability leads to pain. My ancestors and your ancestors deeply know, way back, that vulnerability is open. It's an opening. It's not a closing. It doesn't feel like a shuttering. So if people, I think the pronoun example is really great. We are going to screw that up until it becomes broadly normalized across the board. The trick is when you say, I identify as they, them, that the respondent goes, okay.
Yeah, okay, they,
Okay,
and move on.
sounds good. I'll do what I can. Right? I'm just a person, so, and I'm a person who's entrenched in all these models of what it looks like to be a Native person, a woman, a man, like on and on and on and on and on, right? Like, okay, I'll do better. And then we have the grace and compassion to go, thanks. Sounds good.
Awesome, great.
Awesome. Right? And I think that that's what people we lose sight of that. Okay. Nothing has to have deep meaning. Not everything has deep meaning. Not everything has to be this like, oh my God, I'm so sorry I screwed that up. La, la, la. And also, if just stop and breathe before you speak. This is one thing that I just wish everybody would, like, if you're having an intense conversation with someone, just, even if you have to physically step back, but like, just take a nice big deep breath and go, okay, I'm going to listen. And maybe more of it is just about listening, right? And we don't have to do anything. What if we just listened and didn't think we had to fix it or solve it or take it away or make it better? I was talking earlier about how I feel like it's okay that this democracy is crumbling in the way that it is, because my hope and my prayer and what I see is an opening for this democracy to become even better. That the democracy built on white supremacy and genocide doesn't have to be the end game. And in fact, I think the structure of the three branches of government is genius. I think that the way we have the separation of powers is really, really smart. And I think that what we are starting to notice is that there might be a better way. And this isn't the only way. The way that it has come for the last several hundred years isn't the only way to do things. And that's what I actually love about this country, is we all get to start to realize that perhaps this isn't the only way. That's freedom. Freedom is sitting back and going, I can be open, compassionate, loving, and vulnerable. I don't have to fix everybody. And I can be in community with other people that I don't understand and that don't understand me. And I can still love them at the end of the day.
You said something earlier about just now talking about it crumbling, and what's interesting? We call it an experiment, and like by default, an experiment is something you try, and then you're like, okay, this worked, and this worked, and this worked, and these things didn't work. So now let's try again.
All back to science, right? And like it's all back to the hypothesis.
And at some point we decided that the experiment had to be successful this way. This is how it exactly has to be. And it's like, but wait a minute, it's an experiment. And I feel like we've lost the meaning of the word experiment.
I think we absolutely have. And people really cringe when I tell them that Einstein was looking for God. This great scientist. Anytime you read anything he wrote, he talks about how he's looking for God. He's looking for heaven. He wants greater understanding of spirituality, and he's using science as the way to get to it.
My sister, okay, so she had an investigator. This is the most amazing story. And his name is Hal Dvorak, and he's in pathology. And Syra and him used to talk all the time. She was a czar for years, and they were having a conversation. She's told me this a few times in her office. They were having a conversation. He's very religious, and she said to him, "How can you be so religious and be a scientist?" And he said, "Syra, I found God at the other end of a microscope."
That's right. That's
And
absolutely
I
right. Like
always think of that.
Yes. And when we talk about, like, I was sitting at an Episcopal meeting because I'm a lay preacher in the Episcopal Church, and I was at our annual meeting of our Native ministries, and I'm sitting in this room with all these beautiful and amazing, wonderful Native people, and someone brought up how there in 1 cup of soil there are 1 billion living beings. In 1 cup of soil, there's 1 billion living beings.
That's amazing.
Healthy soil, not decimated soil, but healthy soil.
Right.
Healthy soil that has been nourished and loved and naturally fertilized, not chemically fertilized, has 1 billion living beings in it. And those 1 billion living beings are intricately connected to us and to the stars and to the moon and to the sun and to the planets. And when we start to think about how we are all woven together in that web of life, then we can start to forgive ourselves and others, right? There is a prayer we do in the Episcopal Church where we forgive others for their sins, and, we forgive those who have trespassed against us, and we forgive ourselves for trespassing against ourselves. And to me, the original sin, when I pray that prayer, what I am reminded is when I'm not living out my divine purpose in the world, I am trespassing against myself. I am not listening to my purpose that was given to me by Creator. Creator has brought me here with purpose. And I am here to do good in this world on purpose. And that's what we're all here to do. We're all here to live these lives not with capitalistic, white supremacist driven purpose.
Right.
We are here to be here on purpose. To be here on purpose, to love each other, to look at each other in the eye and say, "Oh, I see you," right? To hold each other in our grief and to celebrate each other in our triumphs. That is why we're here. We are not here with some purpose that feeds some other interest. We're here to see injustice and go, "Oh, I think I have an idea that might be able to help with that. Here's my idea. Who else does this idea jive with?" Because here's the other thing. Your idea and my idea doesn't always have to agree.
We need a lot of different ideas, and
We need a lot of different ideas. Yes.
The problem is too big for us all to have the same idea, right?
We're not going to approach this the same. And that's the beauty of it. That's what we're here to do, is to live this life full of all these ideas and all this stuff to just, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful.
I love this. I love talking to you. I realize I'm looking up and I'm like, God, I could talk to her forever.
So where people can find me, the best place for people to find me is at my website at drmelissabird.com, and also on my Substack, which is it's birdgirl1001 is like how you can find me under my name too, but it's called Love Notes and Prayers, Guidance for the Soul, and little bits of guidance for the soul, because I actually have an ebook that's called Love Notes and Prayers, Guidance for the Soul. And that little ebook, it's like, it's got love notes in it, and then it's got 7 different prayers. The first prayer is the prayer for rebels, my prayer for rebels, and then there's 7 different prayers inside. It's so lovely. It's so
I love it.
I love it so much.
Rebels. I love it.
And so on my Substack, you get weekly love notes, weekly channel messages, and weekly sermons where I get up on my soapbox and say all the things.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. It's been amazing talking to you.
I just love you.
I do. I love you too.